basically agent workflows have lots of LLMs as the nodes and lots of kind of um, English language and prompts as the activations, basically, as the intermediate things.
So what's your advice for, say, first time, like, founders trying to go into YC?
So some of YC's very basic things like constantly talk to your customers, don't over-engineer things until you've got a very simple MVP, launch immediately. Having the Discord is definitely a very useful way for people to just share with us what they want. One good thing that's worth mentioning here is the fact that the router is totally modular. So when we have our router trained, it basically supports kind of 15 or so different models right now.
In today's episode, we invited the founder and CEO of Unify, Daniel Lenton, to be our guest. Unify is on a mission to build LLM-router and help developers choose the best LLM for their use case. Daniel also shares some of his experience at YC as a deep tech founder, which I find quite fascinating, and I think it's useful for everybody, regardless if you have a PhD or not. So let's get started.
Thanks for coming to AI Venture Pulse. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so a little brief intro about people who are first timers. So my name's Daryl Han, and I'm co-founder of the AI Venture Pulse. We dig into AI startups and investors. And with me today is Jianan, who is one of our journalists.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Jianan.
And today with us is also Daniel Lenton from Unify. They're releasing a more or less router, if I understand correctly. And maybe Daniel, you can have a brief introduction to our readers or listeners about yourself and Unify AI and the founding journey.
Yeah, of course. So, quick background on my side. So, I did mechanical engineering at Imperial College. Realized I don't like it at all. Thankfully, was able to go into a PhD. Then also at Imperial College, doing AI, robotics, and 3D vision. Didn't do too much research. Ended up diving deep into infrastructure. Then open sourced a framework called Ivy that got quite a lot of open source traction. It was unifying the different machine learning frameworks. And that went really well. Managed to kind of build a company around that. Realized that the framework fragmentation problem wasn't as pernicious as it used to be. PyTorch really kind of got a lead. So we actually pivoted about 6 or 7 months ago, and we've now been focusing fully on, I guess, another area in need of unification, which is LLM deployment. And what we're effectively doing is dynamically routing every prompt to the best LLM, because users, they care about their cost and their speed and their quality. And it's a waste of money to be sending very easy prompts to GPT-4 when a smaller model can do that. So if you can intelligently work out which prompts should be going to which models, you can end up with something that is very high performing at a much cheaper cost, basically. So that's what we're working on now.
Great, that's great. I saw you guys run a Discord server. I don't know how active that is. Are there any most requested features out there that people are looking forward to?
Yeah, so we often get features about new models. So obviously, we got a feature for Llama 3 very quickly, and we added that. We get feature requests. I mean, we had one that was like just making our Python interface a bit cleaner. So enabling people to see the models we support, the providers we support. We have a lot of requests coming in for our router, which has not launched yet, but we are now going to be officially launching on the 30th of April. So we're kind of 8 days away. So we'll actually be getting that out there in people's hands to play with. But yeah, it's quite varied. We end up with obviously very specific requests that are very task specific, and we delay those. Sometimes people want things to work on their own on-prem. Obviously, getting things working on Azure and GCP for enterprises is an important one that's on the roadmap. So it's quite a mix, but having the Discord is definitely a very useful way for people to just share with us what they want. Sometimes I hop on a quick call with a user because they have a really interesting question. So yeah, Discord is definitely a very good space for getting feedback from the community. Yeah.
Wow. Then how do you see the forthcoming GPT-5?
We mentioned a little bit about the how do you see the mode coming for diminishing for OpenAI and how the open source models are catching up.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. obviously OpenAI has got incredibly intelligent researchers, and I'm sure they still have the edge over GPT or over Llama 3. So if GPT-4 has an edge, which was released quite a long time ago over Llama 3, then I'm pretty confident that GPT-5 will be quite a big jump again. But it does make you think when OpenAI has, maybe 2 billion revenue or something, Meta has, I think upwards of 100 billion revenue, and a lot more employees, a lot of firepower to hire very, very good people, and they're doing it in the open source, which people are going to resonate with. It does make you wonder if all that's required for intelligence is good researchers, a lot of data, a lot of compute. Will OpenAI keep the edge? I don't know exactly. They're smaller than a lot of other big companies out there, which can throw potentially more money at data and compute than OpenAI can. And so I'm not totally sure. But what I imagine is that, GPT-5, aside from being a mixture of experts model with with semantic caching and stuff like this added as well, I imagine it's going to be like an agentic workflow. So I would imagine that GPT-5 can get tasks done and kind of do its own stream of thought reasoning internally. It just feels like an obvious thing. Like when you look at things like software engineering agent, you can just set GPT-4 with a powerful prompt at the beginning and just let it run. It makes its own plans, it gets its own feedback, it looks at its own error logs and it kind of fixes them. And I imagine there might be a mode where GPT-5 can kind of just you can ask it to do a task and it can just go off and start doing it, and you can pause it at any point. It just feels like the way things are going. But in terms of who wins out of open source versus OpenAI, I have no idea, but I think open source is looking stronger with Llama 3 coming out. Yeah.
I was experimenting a little bit with all of them, and what I noticed that each of them would have a different sort of expected input template. And that is what, I do see an issue there if we, for me, say, try to use different models, at the same time, or, how do you think that can be addressed? Or
so that's a really good point. And actually, this is where, so the way we see routing is not something that's going to be done in isolation, actually. We see it as being one of many tools in a much broader toolkit that can be applied to optimize LLM agentic workflows. And actually, a package that I'm a very big fan of is DSPy. That's a really nice package to basically, it's in literally their tagline. It's a way of looking at agent systems not as where you do prompt engineering, but you basically it's a program. It's not kind of a set of prompts. And so I'm just going off on DSPy, but I'm a big fan. But basically, the insight there is that basically agent workflows have lots of LLMs as the nodes and lots of kind of English language and prompts as the activations, basically, as the intermediate things. And what you're trying to do is give an initial task defined as a prompt and get some final output as the end, what the final system does at the end. Much like a neural network where you have an initial input and you need to do some output. And the activations are the intermediate values that go in between each of the nodes of the neural network. Now, in a way, an agentic workflow is the same, but instead of activations, you have intermediate prompts between the different nodes. So what DSPy does is it kind of does an optimization algorithm that iteratively tests lots of different prompts. With noise added, it then sees which ones lead to better results on the final output. And then it kind of uses those prompts and continues to explore that search space in an iterative way that's kind of cost minimizing. We see the router as being part of the same family. And actually, while we do have a one-time trained router that you can kind of use off the shelf as an API, it's really powerful when you then train this end-to-end on your task. And your point about certain templates being well suited to certain types of models.
And another interesting thing I found on your website is the benchmark on different endpoints response time based on different prompt length and types, and it looks quite interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about how you guys thought about it and designed it, and what's the user experience?
Of course, yes. So we noticed that there's been a lot of different runtime experiments, a lot of different runtime benchmarks coming out. So there was some really good work from Anyscale called LLM Bench? I think it might have been called. And they basically showed that, they basically plotted some graphs showing the different runtime performance of their own endpoints versus other endpoints. And there was a bit of a backlash actually because the results were quite simplified and the method wasn't fully explained, and it kind of showed their endpoints to be better than others with some results that were not totally transparent. But one of the insights that we noticed is that these things change drastically through time. Actually taking a static perception where you just think, hey, this is Anyscale Llama 2, and this is Together AI Llama 2, and this is Fireworks AI Llama 2, and here's how fast they all are, and here's the table. That doesn't really make sense because they're constantly going through new API updates. They're constantly changing throughout the hours of the day, basically. And you really need to look at this as a time series graph. And we therefore got that out there. And I think we're the first to make that insight. And that's then very helpful because then what you're able to do is, for example, you can decide to route to the fastest model at your IP address at your time of day. And then all we need to do is look at the data we've extracted from the benchmarks and then send the request to the corresponding endpoint and the corresponding provider, basically. So that's kind of the purpose of those. Having said that, we are doing some deeper analysis now and like uncovering the extent of the noise that's time-based, the extent of the noise that is static, and how the noise varies across providers and so on. And we're hoping to put that in kind of a paper and release it to archive in the coming days, but let's see.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. But just moving on to the application part of it, there's actually a growing demand of this kind of premises deployment options, especially in the enterprise environments for handling like sensitive data. I just wonder are you considering to have this kind of on-prem model routing on the roadmap?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, the vast majority of deployments for LLMs are done on Azure, actually. In fact, most people are using GPT-4 on Azure. And one of the first questions we get is, hey, this sounds great. Can I try this out on my own cloud? And so that is pretty much top of our roadmap immediately. Same with GCP and same with AWS as well, but definitely Azure is top of the list. And I mean, so one good thing that's worth mentioning here is the fact that the router is totally modular. So when we have our router trained, it basically supports kind of 15 or so different models right now. It supports all the different Claude variants and GPT-4 and GPT-3.5 and I don't know, kind of Gemma 13b and Llama 2, Llama 3, etc. But you can very easily add and remove new models. So if you kind of say, well, I only care about GPT-4 and GPT 3.5 and maybe one other model on Azure, then that's fine. You can just remove all the other models and the router will automatically just use those three models, because basically the way the router is queried is you kind of give these like latent representations of the models independently across the batch dimension, and the network actually only takes in one model at a time, and you can then just like batch query that and then make the comparisons, basically. So that's definitely very important for us to close the loop with our kind of early enterprise users, many of which want to try this but can't quite yet because the Azure integration is on the roadmap, but hopefully not too much longer.
Wow. Actually excited to try it out, and then I saw you guys released a paper on Ivy, and you briefly mentioned about it before. So how do you think this LLM-router plugs into Ivy, if at all? And do you think Ivy will be sort of the overall, like, all-inclusive product once this is going well?
Yeah, so Ivy is actually what we were working on before the pivot. So Ivy unifies the different machine learning frameworks together and makes all of those compatible. So you can convert PyTorch to TensorFlow, you can convert TensorFlow to JAX and so on, and Paddle and several others. And then, in October last year, we continued to work on that, but decided to double down on LLM routing. And we've actually got some commercial traction with Ivy with some big enterprises that have a TensorFlow PyTorch fragmentation problem. But as it stands, they're separate products. We did actually consider, and we are still considering, expanding Ivy's horizons to kind of not only unify the frameworks, but actually unify the LLM endpoints as well and kind of weave the narrative together. We're just not sure if that's necessarily the cleanest thing. The good thing is it would kind of bring our community along the ride with us and kind of continue building upon the same foundations we built before. The downside is they're quite different products, and maybe it's best just to kind of create a new package for what we're doing now with LLMs. We're still working that out, but certainly the core content of Ivy is a separate problem that's being solved, basically. So not that much direct relation to the LLM routing stuff at the moment.
I'm so impressed because you have been in part of the Y-Combinator program, one of the sort of the most renowned startup accelerator globally. And I just wonder if you have any experience or moments that you have been engaging with YC that you want to share with us. What are the valuable lessons or how is your experience influencing your approach to the entrepreneurship and the development of Unify.ai?
Yeah,
Sure.
maybe I just add something like, what's your advice for, say, first time, like, founders trying to go into YC and, people who get into YC for the first time?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that I was incredibly naive and a little bit probably arrogant, like feeling as though that like I kind of knew it all anyway, which I didn't. We were kind of doing a deep tech thing. So some of YC's very basic things like constantly talk to your customers, don't over-engineer things until you've got a very simple MVP, launch immediately, like launch incredibly quickly, the simplest version you can, get it in front of people, get feedback. Don't ask them for features, ask them for problems. Don't shoehorn your product into their face because you're going to get very biased and unhelpful feedback. Like the reality is for the first year or so of the company, we were building this kind of very complex thing, Ivy, and we were doing it in a way where it wasn't like we had users, it had a lot of users, but like we weren't really like checking if this was like exactly what they wanted. We were kind of just like had this vision of like the perfect way of unifying all of AI, and like this was our mission. We're going to unify all frameworks no matter what, and like we're going to do every library and every version, every function, and like doing this kind of in a silo without kind of constantly talking to users. And it turned out that that was, as YC would predict, like not the way to build things. And I kind of realized that after a year or so, like, yeah, well, actually, the growth isn't kind of what it should be. We should actually be kind of like really plugged in, listening to users. Is this the problem that is burning and everybody really needs to solve? And certainly there was a market, but it wasn't a market that was kind of, hyper growth market. And I mean, all of our investors give us very good advice, and there's lots of good sources of advice, but the standout for good advice is YC. And that's the kind of thing that I heard a lot of founders say. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. But like, particularly when you're pre-product market fit and you don't really have it, it's very easy to believe you do, because a lot of investors have raised money invested money in you. You've raised maybe several millions of dollars. You've got like lots of very smart people telling you this sounds awesome and it's amazing. But again, it means nothing unless they're users. Like the only people that can actually guide whether you're doing well is that you have users that love your product and you're seeing like exponential growth. Unless you have those things, there's companies that raise $100 million and never find product market fit. They've raised because they got a big name, and they raised because of whatever, and like they still never actually have a product anyone cares about. So I think YC keeps people very grounded. They don't kind of inflate your ego because you've raised a lot. They don't care about like all this kind of vanity stuff. Like they say, how many users do you have? Like right now, not signups. How many users do you have? Like what's your churn rate? What's your retention rate? How much is it growing every month? And founders trying to deflect these questions, but the YC don't let you, and like that's a very good thing. So my advice would be like listen to what they say and watch all the videos and try and build something people want and talk to your users and start doing that even before you apply. Like don't talk about your vision for the future. Talk about your first 10 users and how you're going to get them and whether they love what you're doing.
Do you do any cross-pollination between these founders in the cohort?
Maybe. I mean, to be perfectly honest, most of the value I have derived has just come from kind of talking to the partners and the user manual and everything. The branding also helps for sure, but the points really help as well. I mean, what's been useful for us, to be honest, from our cohort has been that we're building like LLM infrastructure, and like the vast majority of YC companies are now building LLM like applications. So there's a very good source of potential users, and we therefore talk to a lot of these companies and ask if they're interested in using what we've built and everything, and have really good feedback conversations there about how useful what we've built is and so on. So that's been really great. It's obviously just very good to have this very like supportive space where like in Buckface, for example, you go and people talk about the hard stuff they've been through. They raise, that they got revenue, then another competitor destroyed the market, and now they're back to square one, and they have to like lay off half the team. And I don't know, kind of obviously you realize pretty quickly that every single founder journey is a total roller coaster. Like everyone is like kind of struggling at one point or another. Like it's kind of a lot of highs and lows, and I think it's a very authentic community that's kind of really about supporting each other through that, and one where everybody understands like the stresses of being a founder. And I think that's a very powerful tool as well. It's something that I think founders that aren't in YC miss out on, because I think like I'm in other Slack groups. I'm obviously in groups with other funds where we have like Slack groups and we have webinars together, but I'm not sure exactly why, but it doesn't capture quite the same kind of community that YC captures yet.
Well, yeah, that's amazing. Especially when hearing the journey of building something isn't always easy. And I just want to hear, like, could you just share with us one moment throughout your journey that you can see as your highlight, and conversely, where's your low light or challenge, and how you navigated it?
Sure. I guess kind of starting with the it's a difficult one. Like starting with the challenge. So we had a team of like maybe 25 engineers at the end of last year, and we're now down to 7. So having to shrink the team down was incredibly difficult. Like I really care about everybody on the team. I really, maintain a relationship with all of those people still, and basically having to like realizing that the direction we were going in isn't the big market that we thought it was, needing to get back down to basics, not because we're like low on money or anything, but just because for us to be efficient kind of on the new direction, we need to be a very lean team that can think fast, move fast, try new things quickly, see what sticks. Like we just need a small, lean, highly capable team, and it just doesn't make sense to kind of continue with the inertia of a larger team that was built around a previous direction. So having to accept that I've made a mistake in judgment and take responsibility for that and let go of a lot of people, definitely one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And difficult, obviously, not only for the people that had to leave, but for myself. So that's, I guess, the low point. Just the high point, I mean, I feel very optimistic now about what we're doing. I guess I think I'm like a born optimist in a way. So like, even though it's been an incredibly turbulent journey, like we have an amazing team. I'm really excited about where the LLM space is going. I'm just like honored to still be like trying things and like seeing what sticks, and like, I'm confident we're going to make it and going to succeed as a company. I kind of always feel that way. So I just feel, I don't know, it's a bit cliched, but I feel perpetually grateful to be on this journey and to kind of be trying. And it's such an exciting thing to be trying to do, to kind of, build something of massive value in such a cool space. So I feel very grateful every day. I'm like, full of energy and optimism and enthusiasm right now. And so I don't know, I'm also grateful that I was able to kind of learn some important lessons quickly enough. And I'm still learning. I'm sure I'll look back in 6 months at decisions I made today and realize, well, that was stupid and that was stupid. But obviously, it feels very good to be growing with all of that. And every mistake that I make definitely massively improves me in that same situation the next time around. So I don't know. Like I guess a high point is it's a bit cliche, but just I guess right now I'm feeling like I'm at a high point because we're about to launch in 8 days and I'm very excited. Yeah, let's see.
Are you losing any sleep over it, or
over the launch or the difficult stuff? You mean? I definitely do
the launch.
sleep.
The launch.
Oh, the launch. Yeah. No, not losing sleep over the launch. I lose sleep over sometimes. Having to let people go and stuff. That's what I might lose sleep over more likely. But no, I mean, definitely there's been very stressful moments where it is hard to sleep and you can feel a bit overwhelmed because it's a bit. Not that it's applied, but of course you feel a bit of pressure because all these investors have believed in you. They've put a lot of money behind you to kind of accept that what you were trying first is wrong, and you've shrunk the team and stuff. Like everyone understands it and is very supportive, but of course you feel a bit of pressure because you never want to let the team down. You never want to let the people that believe in you down and stuff. So there's definitely some pressure, but like I don't know. I think in a way you can't let it be too consuming though, because I mean, it's not good for the company if you are like, if it dictates your life. You need to make sure that the company is one part of a otherwise balanced life, but it is something that we're desperate to succeed. But you kind of need to turn all of that into positive energy. So, like in a way, like if you're really enthusiastic and you can't wait, and you're like, I need to get this done, need to get this done, need to get this done, because that's what's going to make it succeed, and you're excited and you're pushing people, and like that's kind of the energy you need, and you can't kind of let any fear of failure hold you back. And I think therefore you need to be quite optimistic and quite energized and quite accepting of the fact that it might not work. And if you did your best, like, you know, you should be proud still. Like if you internalize that, then I think you end up not losing sleep, and you end up just kind of enjoying the ride and seeing it for what it is. And, you know, accepting that 9 out of 10 startups fail. Like you really, really, really don't want yours to fail, and you're going to do everything you possibly can. But like, you know, don't go crazy about it. Like, you know,
I mean, like everyone,
and give yourself a break. But
I think like everyone thinks that they're like the 1 out of the 10, but then just, you know, kind of also need to accept that like we're all just vulnerable. And
you need to believe you're the 1 out of 10. I guess it's like two things. What I mean is, I believe I'm the 1 out of 10. To be honest, I feel right now we're going to launch. It's going to go amazing. I know exactly how we're going to get the first customers. We're going to get profitable. Like, of course, we're going to be $1 billion company. Like, you kind of need to believe that and feel that in a way, because that's what drives you. It's the excitement of that vision. And like, you know, my day to day is like believing that's where we're going. Like, totally.
Yeah.
But I guess you also need to then, when things aren't going well, kind of, I guess, just not. At the same time, you need to kind of, if you do feel the stress coming, and it could be a bit overbearing, you need to be able to kind of, you know, not let it crush you and be like, well, you know, if it doesn't work, it's not a disaster. Because if you feel that, and it's the only thing that, you know, you need it for your, you know, sense of self to be validated or something, then it's not good. So
yeah, I think it's also part of the journey. I mean, you know, the market is like what it is, but also with the new LLMs, people are scrambling to still see how they can use it in a way. So I think it's, you know, not only startups, but also the enterprises, they are trying to figure out what's their need. And, you know, I guess it's just learning journey for everybody. And there's, hopefully there's
a lot of people that still don't know how they're using it. There's a lot of people that still really just kind of don't know where to start. I talk to quite a lot of big enterprises that, you know, still just trying to get a basic RAG pipeline together. They've hired consultants or JP Morgan or whatever to, no, not JP Morgan. They've hired, like McKinsey or something to like help them with their AI, and like no one really knows what they're doing. No one really has it in production. So there's a lot of playing around. My guess is that maybe agents take over, and this whole period of big enterprises like fumbling around, fine tuning their models and stuff like is a thing of the past. And everybody just kind of ends up with like a agent that they can just hire, that they can talk to via email, they can hop on a Skype call with, they can effectively interact with the AI in the exact same way you would interact with a remote worker that you've never met in person. And that's the user experience that will come to the enterprise. And this whole period of fine-tuning their own model will just kind of be a blip in history, is what I think might happen, but let's see.
Yeah, because I do see, you know, people are trying to launch all of these chatbots out there. This is like this chatbot for this purpose or that chatbot for that purpose. But I do think maybe moving forward, like multi-model models, you know, as you know, probably asked about before in the NOS event, I think it just provides better UX for me. But we often just
the big thing as well. I was kind of really thinking that like what would be amazing is if you can just like if I did, instead of having to sign up on GPT-4 or whatever, like if I could literally just be like, okay, this is now my new AI assistant, and like this is the email address, this is their, you know, Instagram, I could forward them reels, whatever, like this is their Twitter account, this is their whatever, like this is their Slack account, this is their Discord. Like you can then just like say, hey, forward it to this person. Hey, by the way, you should read this document. Hey, you should read these books. Hey, can you help me with this? And like this agent just has the entire context of every interaction you've had with them across all mediums. This would be like a very powerful user experience, I think. I think that's one thing that could help make this way more accessible to kind of, you know, the average person. But I think the technology is the main blocker. I think basically like the task that these can actually do independently, like, is the biggest thing that's making it not have a big broad impact, I think.
Okay. And so I guess just to end on, let's talk about future. Where do you see the next steps for Unify.ai are and yourself, I guess, in 5 years or maybe 10 years?
I don't know. I guess either.
So what drives you,
I guess let's see. Hopefully still around. I need to stop drinking so much Monster Energy drink.
Love it as well.
I mean, hey, I'm having this one. I've become addicted to the kind of zero sugar green that came out recently. It's too good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Unify. Let's see. Like we're launching our router in 8 days. We're very excited about that. I think there's other areas we can expand into from that. One of them would be, as I say, these kind of DSPy style agent workflow end-to-end optimization, where you take an entire system, you kind of apply an optimizer, and we kind of include the routing as part of that. I think that's a really interesting area. Another area is just kind of improving the UX. I still think, even with the very verticalized stuff, the UX for engaging with AI just sucks. Like, you talk to just general people, like, my mum can't use AI. She wouldn't really know where to start. But if I said, you now have a new friend, and this is the email address, and this is the WhatsApp message, and this is the phone number, and this is the Skype address, like, you can just engage with this person, and they're going to remember every conversation you've had and learn from experience, and you can tell them to read books and whatever. Like,
yeah.
So anyway, I think there's lots of untapped potential in terms of creating value.
Right.
And I think these are the two areas I'm interested in going in. I hope that Unify is still alive in 5 and 10 years and is an important part of agent deployment. But so, I hope that we've made it as a company. We're still, tens of millions of revenue. Obviously, the bigger, the better.
Yeah.
But I just really want to provide value, though. Obviously, like, I want us to do well. It's very hard to know how the field is going to evolve. Like, if we get AGI, like, what does defensibility even mean? Like, if you have a full AGI, like, you don't need any verticalized version. You just get your AGI to do everything for you to some extent.
Right.
So I think it's very hard to predict where things are going. So I'm just kind of excited to be deep in the weeds on the cutting edge, trying to provide value and hoping that we can solve a real problem for a lot of people, and doing everything we can to do that. If we don't make it, then fine. But yeah, I'm pretty optimistic that we'll be able to build something, keep building some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just, create value is what I guess startups are always striving for. And, hopefully we can still see Unify in, say, 5 years and perhaps be a customer of it.
Yeah, well, I would love it.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as financial or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or timeliness of the information presented. This podcast is not an offer or solicitation for the purchase or sale of any financial instrument. Thank you for subscribing, and see you again soon.